We'll intervene whenever we decide it's in our national security interest to intervene. And if you don't like it, lump it.
The problem with America is not that we go around marauding around the world imposing ourselves. The problem with America in the last 10, 15 years since the end of the Cold War, really in the last 60 years, is that we've been too slow to get involved.
I don't know how many Iraqi civilians were killed, but I can assure you that the number is the absolute minimal that it's possible in modern warfare.
Every nation in every region now has a decision to make. Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists.
Now, that land over there is yours. You'll go back to it one day because your fight will prevail and you'll have your homes and your mosques back again because your cause is right and God is on your side.
Welcome to the Darkened Hour.
Thank you for coming to another episode of the Darkened Hour. And with me is a very special guest, somebody an instance I've never done an interview with a first responder, and this is the first time, and I couldn't ask for a more prolific guest. He is the president and CEO who has over 45 years of experience in the fire service, emergency management, operations, research, training, and academia. His name is Richard Rotanz, and his eclectic career has him functioning as a program manager in New York City's Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, co-developed and performed as the executive director of the Applied Science Foundation for Homeland Security, co-developed Adelphi University's graduate degree in emergency management, and performed as the first commissioner for the Office of Emergency Management of Nassau County, New York. During the September 11th attacks upon New York City, and after digging his way out of World Trade Center 1 with his staff, he reinstituted and relocated the destroyed Emergency Operations Center to Pier 92 and managed the multi-organization response of over 120 agencies, organizations, and businesses to the 9/11 tragedy. Welcome to the show, Mr. Rotanz.
Much, please. Okay.
Oh, yeah. I'm a concierge, so I'm always addressing people by their last name, and it's a respect issue. If I ever called you Mr. Rotanz, don't take offense, but I'll call you Richard. But thank you. Just coming across your bio and reading your history the last week, you have an illustrious history working as a civil servant in the fire department. So I think we should start there. When did you start your career in the fire department, and what made you interested in this field?
Well, back in the late 60s, my father was killed in the line of duty as a police officer in 103 precinct. So I wanted, when you're a kid back then, I wanted to go into the Army Rangers right at the bat. And so when I went down to Fort Benning, the guys from the 103 precinct said, "Get home, kid, take care of your mother." So when I went home, my mother goes, "Why don't you join the fire department?" So I did that with the volunteers for a while, and I came onto the job in the late 70s, and I worked in companies like 120 Truck, Rescue 2, get promoted, working with the Corona Tigers, get promoted, was open to firehouses, then I went to the safety battalion, all special ops and so on. Did a lot of research on bunker gear and safety research on how guys were getting hurt or killed. Then I went over to, was asked to go over to OEM, and just the beginning of 2000 because of the background research and planning. And that was my responsibilities to be the chief editor for all the emergency operation plans, as well as manage the EOC when necessary. And from there, after I was asked by County Executive Tom Swazi in 2002 to start up his OEM agency, which can't turn that down, starting a government agency. And I was asked to create graduate degree programs in Adelphi and St. John Jay, and on. So I've really had a good career. Now I got 2 sons of the captains, 4 sons of the cops, guys, Marines and Army, and so on. So it's a family tradition. It goes all the way back to 1812 in the military. So so far, so good. I'm still here.
Yeah, that's a lot. And you're always active. You just received your PhD at the Walden University, right? Is that
my PhD was like 3 years ago. Yeah, 3 years ago, and is in public administration, specializing in policy and operations.
Have you always? I mean, it seems that your whole life has been nothing more than just always on the move, always doing something. Is that installed in even your children now?
My sons are, like I said, my daughters, with their careers and school teachers, whatnot. They don't let any more go under their feet. That's for sure. And now they're having their own families as well.
Right, and even throughout the your career with the fire department, has there been at any point in time that this notion of radical fundamentalism would ever become prescient in your life? I mean, has there been any like study or interest in the fire department regarding radical fundamentalism before the 93 bombing?
Before the 93 bombing, I was watching, the national, circus, so to speak, and, the guys and the 200 some Marines that were killed. All of a sudden Pakistan's got a nuclear weapon. Things like
That's
this, like what's
the
going on?
Beirut barracks bombing, right? The Beirut.
Right, yeah, and 220 Marines, and all this instability that was going on in like Pakistan's now got a nuclear weapon. India's got a nuclear weapon,
Right.
and I would see these in Bushwick, some of these mosques and so on. You have a lot of these guys walking around with bats and so on. It just I was starting to get curious with why is this evolving? And when we got the hit in 1993 in February, I said this is not going good, especially when you had the guy, the blind sheik on
Omar Abdel Rahman.
Yeah, and on Park Avenue, right in front of 230 Engine there in Marcy, so to speak. And I said, I hope somebody in both our agencies, FBI and CIA, do something about this because it's not good. Then when he got the bombing, and then I was hearing bits and pieces over there was threats to the Vatican about flying a jet into it. Hello, right. How about we take our airlines and really secure them down? They gave billions of dollars to do that, and in my opinion, the airlines failed miserably. All right, and yes. They don't have the even besides TSA lock the cockpit door. I mean, have some type of bolt action with that. But that's neither here nor there. When I really feel that our agencies have failed us big time, and even today, during the Emergency Operations Center, and then I guess like October 2001, one of the guys introduced me to these two guys, one from CIA, one from FBI. They had some kind of arrogance about them, and I just sort of kind of ignore them. They were saying like, "What's your problem?" I go, "What's my problem?" Let's say Kenya, Somalia, 1993, Lebanon bombing. Oh, what about behind? Look behind you. Look at the pictures. 343 guys. See ya. There's so much intelligence that's out there. Even today, I'm watching a very dangerous thing going on now with the China, Russia, Brazil, Iran. They're all going through their own currencies. That's not a good sign. They want to do is in big time by the back door with that dollar. But that's neither here nor there. But yes, to answer your question in a roundabout way, I had some thoughts about it. I was too involved with fire life safety for the brothers on getting them better gear and find out how they're getting killed and hurt.
Did you manage to respond to the 93 World Trade Center bomb when it happened?
Later on, I was in Queens, so I wasn't initially there like I was in 2001.
What was the response by the fire department in regards to an incident like that? Did they manage to formulate any internal divisions relating to international terrorism after the 93 attack?
Well, they had Special Operations Command. They were drilling for that, and we were drilling that the day of the attack. Right. All right, and we had fire, police, sheriff, sanitation, education department. We were going to conduct a large-scale biodefense drill at Pier 92, and that's how we got the real estate for the EOC. Right. On Wednesday, the 12th of September, we were supposed to have 1,500 cadets and 200 probies go through and see how fast we could give out Doxy, Cipro, and so on, and just from pills and do a time series analysis and so on. But it didn't happen.
All right, let's talk about that. You were actually in a meeting with First Deputy John Oldermatt and the planning supervisor Mike Berkowitz you were on, I think, the 21st floor of the World Trade Center, and you were running 23rd. Right. You were running a bioterrorism drill located at Pier 92. Tell us a little bit more about this.
Well, we were getting ourselves prepared. The tables, equipment, and so on. The M&Ms and peanuts or what have you to give out as pills, and we were discussing that about finalizing the report, the functions and activities. And with that, we just hear this amazing sound of a jet that just like, we're looking at each other, that's way too close, and we then heard the explosion. And we looked out, we see the damage and the carnage, and Mike went to start up the EOC. I went down to establish a command center and the fire safety director desk. And the biggest hazard right then and there were the jumpers, all right, and the debris that was still coming down. And when I met up to the safety director, I was establishing communications with the EOC. And then, my commissioner, Richie, showed up. and a few other people. Then first of all was Joe Pfeiffer. And me and Joe were discussing about the issues of what's going to go on and so on. I just told him, I go, Joe, I'm going to activate the OC. If you need something, you know how to get me. And I left him there. Go to Tower 7. And I told the security, go, look, 4, 5, 6, and 7, tell security, evacuate the buildings and go north. Just get out of here. Because, at that time, going back to Tower 7, the second plane hit. And it was take rocket scientists to, realize that we're under attack again.
Correct.
And
did you order the first evacuation?
Oh, Tower 7, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You ordered the evacuation.
Security had no problems with that.
None.
You go, you got it, boss. Yeah. So just say, make sure everybody goes north and get out of the target zone. And then when I get upstairs, I told my staff, I go, folks, we're out of here. All right. And they went downstairs, went out the back, and we evacuated the building. Myself and my partner, Rick Bialik, we went down to Tower 1, and that's where I saw Joey, Father, the judge, and so on at the end.
Yeah.
Gave a wave. They went one direction, I went the other, just to get out of the building. And with that, Tower 2 came down. Now you have to understand, it's like being inside a foxhole, and you got grenades all around you. In that building, we thought the side of Tower 1 fell down. They had no idea that the entire building collapsed, even though the floor shook and threw both of us about 20 feet.
Right.
They, when it stopped, it was a dead silence. And then we started the light period, like spears coming through the smoke. And we fell about maybe 10, 12 minutes, which felt like eternity. We got outside of the north side of Tower 1 and worked our way down to the escalator. That's outside escalator at Bessie Street. And that's how we got out. It was a mess. And then as we're going up North Broadway, then we heard the Tower 1 coming down. We're still thinking in our minds now the rest of the building's coming down, not knowing the 2 came down. Because you're right there in the middle of it. And it's so large and so devastating. So, and then we got it, made the turn onto Barclay, and this wall of gray smoke went right. It was like a curtain, and went by. So then we tried to regroup ourselves. Rick went to get the folk to get the command vehicle, and I saw one battalion chief all covered with dust, and saying, "I go, how are the rest of the guys on that side? Because I think 2 of your kids are here," which they were. I go, do you know where they are? Because I have no idea if anybody's alive over there. So, and they said they were told about me that I had perished. Right. And then we found each other on West and Vesey Street. And then we got ourselves cleaned up. And, the rest is going on.
Yeah. Just before that, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, one of the first fatalities was Father Michael Judge.
Fireman was killed by a jumper just before him. And then the judge collapsed from a heart attack.
Yeah, Judge collapsed from a heart attack. That was the concern initially. It wasn't so much the towers collapse; it was the jumpers, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. When operations were undertaken by Joe Pfeiffer in the North Tower, I'd like to know if you can expand on this a little bit. What were the initial, the initial steps taken? Was it to basically put out the fire, or basically get people out of the building? Maybe a mixture of both. Were there other steps taken during this?
Well, no. I saw a lot of the staff come there, like Ray Downey, Chief Downey, that was killed. Yeah. And he was talking to a friend of mine, Terry Hatton, the Captain Rescue One. And I remember, I'll never forget, as long as I lived there, Ray said, I didn't plan on going out this way. He knew that this is going to be the biggest one of our lives. And I'm trying to coordinate communications from the fire safety director's post where everybody was, and the OC, get that set up. And there was discussion about getting people out of the buildings, get them out, and then try and attempt to put the fire up, because they don't know how much damage there was to the stand pipelines. All right, when that plane hit, they said, well, first of all, you had that one woman that was burned, that was screaming in the hallway. She was burned by the jet fuel that ignited on her. And I thought it was very honorable that the 2 French videographers, they never took pictures of her.
That's right.
Which I thought, yeah. And she's there. She was 100% burns, first-degree burns, but I understand that she survived. And you could smell, the jet fuel downstairs because it came down, burned.
You could actually smell the jet fuel even. Was it that prominent?
You could smell it. It wasn't that, profound, but you could still smell the jet fuel. But I saw Joey there with, he's directing guys to go to staircase B, where he sent his brother, Kevin, who never made it back, and a lot of other guys. So it was a combination of get the people out, and let's see if we could extinguish it. But how long are we going to work on this job? Because there was too many structural insults to Tower 1 at the time.
Was it a lack? All right, my next question would be, because I've heard from reports that you basically took the stairs because the elevators were malfunctioned at this time.
Yeah. Yeah, no one trusted the elevators.
No one trusted the elevators. No one trusted the elevators. And by going up the stairs, because you're trying to reach 80 floors, and that's just undertaken with so much weight that the firemen carry up these stairs, and time is not of the essence. What was it the lack of water, or is it the worry that the fires would expand northward or southward? What was the more, I guess, prescient worry with the firemen themselves trying to reach the higher floors?
All I know is, for the guys I talked to that made it out of Tower 1, is that their main concern was to try to get people out. Sure. All right. And when I heard other guys on the fire floors, like had Oriel Palmer was indicating that there's multiple 1045 code 1s, meaning dead.
Right.
And multiple 1045 code 2s means severe. And there's some indication that there was body parts everywhere. The ones that came back down. But that was my intention, was diverted to get the EOC evacuated. And by the time it came down, so when Tower 1 came down, we lost a lot of guys, not knowing that 2 came down and 1 came down, and Pete Gansey, Feehan, Downey, they're all gone. Now it's like, okay, now what? And people don't understand the devastation of those 2 buildings collapse. I think, I understand the situation reports indicated that the people that do the earthquake measurements was like 2.2 on the Richter scale on both buildings when they came down. And, it's the devastation below the buildings. You had steam lines, power lines, water lines, communication was gone. You had the railways were destroyed, the roads were destroyed, and plus they had the fact that a bank with $1 billion worth of gold and silver. What are you going to do with that? So the feds took care of that. But after that, that night I went home, got showered off and changed, and came back to work. And the first EOC that we had, we were borrowing the library at the police academy. And then myself and Henry Jackson, who was another deputy commissioner at the time, he's still there working there today as chief operations officer. We built upon the real estate of P92 to build the EOC.
Did you manage to go back to the World Trade Center 7 after the collapses of 1 and 2?
Yeah, what happened was Pete Hayden, God bless this guy, I love him crazy. He asked me to go with Chief Rausch, Deputy Chief Rausch, and another battalion chief, but I can't remember his name. I think he passed away. He said, look, guys, do me a favor, just take a look so you see if it's worth putting these guys back to work in Tower 7. And I was like a little shocked, like, okay. As you went around in front of the building, you looked up, there was massive holes that you could drive a tractor trailer standing on its hind heels going through the building. Massive
in World Trade Center 7.
7, up parts of 40th and 30th floors. Just a lot of destruction. So the 3 of us went into the building. We walked up the stairs, and what got me in the 3rd floor was, the open 3rd floor was just the buoyancy, negative buoyancy, just dust standing right there in the middle of in the air. It wasn't moving up or down. It was just it was there. It was very stagnant, very eerie. We got up to the 8th floor and worked our way down the hallway, and what we saw was somewhat bizarre. Was an elevator car down the hallway, not in the shaft, down the hallway. And it was like 5 or 6 floors above it with no floors. Our main concern was, let's bang on the elevator, see if we get in there to make sure no one's in there, but there wasn't anybody in there. And we looked at each other and said, time to exit, stage right, we're out of here. Because you could hear the fire on the upper floors, you could hear the building creaking, and we came downstairs, we're out of here. And we told Chief Hayden, this is coming down. And it did about 7 hours later on.
Yes, it did. There was you actually gave testimony in a civil case of Aegis Incorporated versus World Trade Center 7, and I think that was on May 14th of 2009 or 10. And you actually testified that when you were surveying the building, there was other fire chiefs, and I think those fire chiefs, if I can remember, one of them being Anthony Varel, I think, or was he a fire chief? I think it was Anthony Varel or Frank Carruthers, I think. And
Frank.
yeah, the argument, the question I have for you was that they had met an engineer whose name was not known at the time, and basically surveyed the building with the chiefs and basically said that this building was in danger of collapse because of the amount of damage that was at the southern edge of the southern corner of the south side of the building. The damage that you described, which was basically a vertical, I think, like this huge gash in the building, and of course the fires that couldn't be put out. Were you part of that group initially?
All I did was I reported it to Chief Hayden, okay, and if Crothers was there, I go, and even Roush was doing most of the talking. He goes, "We're not going in there. We're not going in."
Because of you felt that the building was in danger.
Didn't take a rocket scientist to say that, you know.
Right, for sure. Now, also, was there a water problem? Because I heard that the reason why they couldn't put out the fires was because the water lines were severed. Was that right?
Well, a lot of the Hygiene lines were severed, but that's why they had the marine units stretch their 5-inch hose to supply water. Okay. But that wasn't done until everything was collapsed. All right, they had to survey the whole area, and you still had the fire. There's a lot of things that were going on.
Yes.
But it's a bit many people realize. I mean, you had insult to the slurry wall. All right, the slurry wall, if that would have caved in, would have drowned everybody working on the hull. And that was one of the first structural components of the World Trade Center back in the 70s that kept back, the dirt and waters from the Hudson and Hudson and the Bay.
I think that was called the basement. That they called the basement of the.
And I guess they called it the basement. Never heard that term, but I know that the slurry wall was one of the things that were being considered about if it were to collapse, it would be serious.
Right.
We would meet over at the firehouse on Duane Street. One of the suggestions I made, because I've done some land surveying teams, was to bring in EDMs, electrical the distance measurement devices, and start lines going down West Highway. And this way, you could survey exactly where the buildings used to be,
right, and
to grid out the areas in 75-foot sections. And that's what they did, because you have to have some type of coordination. And I go, with all the noise that's going on, we're going to need some type of code or some type of siren. And I think some of the guys were getting the loudspeakers from like Yankee Stadium and Shea Stadium, whatnot, to hit it a couple of times. Everybody would stop because something's going on, or they found a body. So a lot of things were ad hoc to do the operations at the event. But meanwhile, my main concern was getting the EOC up and running.
Yeah, that was the first and foremost, right? Because you need a command center. Right.
Well, they had a small one. Was going on in the school, but down the block, but that was a mishmash of things. So once we got ourselves activated, it was Tuesday, and I think it was like Thursday night we finalized. And when I went to P92, I had a lot of guys from longshoremen, construction workers, and so on just sitting around, what are we doing up here? We need some help. So I got a soapbox. I swear, Adam, an actual soapbox that said soap on it. And I stood there and I go, brothers, I need your help. I identified myself as Deputy Commissioner, Captain Richie, Rotanz, FDNY. We need to build this command center so we can help the brothers and sisters down here. Are you with me? Hey! So they just, did anything we did. We set up the tables, set the wine, we set up the phones, the radios, the computers, the whole bit. And the guys were great. And they raised the podium up so I could oversee the whole operations. They were really good. So we had that done, and the first operation was started on Friday.
Was it a worry of the fire department and the other emergency services? Was that after the collapses had happened, that you had an influx of volunteers that wanted to help? Was that a problem?
God? Yeah. Look, a lot of the guys that are on a job were in volunteer fire companies in the 5 counties surrounding the city, Suffolk, Nassau, this, that, and the other. And they're all lined up on West Highway. So I took my partner, who's a sergeant to NYPD. And we took another guy from the military, went up to the guys, the first truck. I go, guys, we love you crazy, but you can't go in there. Yeah. But why not? I go, look, your Scott mask and your other type of SCBAs don't match. Your nozzles don't match. Your radio communications don't match. And we don't want to have any more to kill. You got to go. They caused a little bit of stir, but some guys, they snuck in, but we got them out.
Right.
Because first of all, we don't know who's who. Okay. Right. And we don't make sure everybody's okay. But that was another challenge amongst many.
Oh, I'm sure. I've always been, because I was living in New York when this was going on, and I know that you couldn't get anywhere. There was like a coordinated effort, and I think it was maybe 6 or 7 blocks. It was cordoned off from the public, and you basically had to have a pass of sorts to get in the area itself. And I think the military was involved in coordinating these.
Well, what it was is that the NYPD, along with the military, sheriff's department, and we had a meeting like once a day with every security thing you could possibly think of: FBI, CIA, NYPD, sanitation police, sheriff department. Sheriff department is unbelievable. These people are fantastic.
Sure.
School security that were there say, what are our needs? So if the city needed can't fulfill the needs, the state would step in. If the state can do it, the feds would step in. So it was a very well coordinated fashion that we had one deputy chief, I believe, from corrections office. He was in charge of his credentialing. So you had a color code, the red, white, blue, and black. Black was classified. So if you had that, you could go anywhere. But I'm telling you, some of these people, you got to give them credit. They're sneaky bastards. These two sheriffs, little big, big bulky black guys, are great. They would drive me down to the site. They did my 1 hour survey every day. And a guy came up to me. He goes, "Who are you?" I go, "Excuse me." I go, "Commissioner Rotanz." He goes, "No, I am apparatus." Yeah. And just throw up the bucket to advertise it that they're still in their apparatus fires them. It's like, it was nuts. People want to go down there and pray. You had in the EOC, we had so many actors and actresses and sports celebrities that wanted to help. Okay. You had Valentine for the Mets. They go, "Can we do phone thanks for you?" The Sopranos. I mean, Bette Midler, all these people that came down, they just wanted to help. And I thought it was great, but you got to get away from the dust. We have no idea what's in it.
Oh, I'm surprised that I'd never heard this before, that celebrities actually wanted to help.
A lot of, oh yeah. They're very concerned. What can we do? And they said, just support us in spirit. But right now we can't bring you down there because when they get hurt,
Yeah, then it's also an insurance issue. You can't guarantee their safety and stuff. So,
yeah.
You know what? I have a question for you, Richard. Were you surprised that the towers had collapsed at all?
No, not at all. Not at all. You got to think of that. These planes, they built up to like 550, hitting it with how much? Like 30,000 pounds of fuel.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know if any type of building could withstand that. And the first building went down was Tower 2 because it got kicked to the knees, while Tower 1 got kicked in the shoulders, up higher.
Right.
So the guy when the guy hit Tower 2, he knew what he was doing. And no, unfortunately, both came down.
Was it also, I've dealt with people in viral media and organizations over the years regarding World Trade Center 7, which has been a focal point in the 9/11 Truth Movement. And the question I have for you is that, there's been arguments about whether there was explosives used or incendiary devices used in World Trade Center 7. Have you ever experienced anything like that? And what would be your response to that?
I was interviewed by BBC and a few other people about that. I didn't smell explosives. I didn't hear the popping before the building came down. So I highly doubt there was any explosives. These buildings were hit, and they were hit hard, and they came down in pancake fashion the way it's called progressive collapse. And just like Tower 7, even though it folded in like closing your fist, they came down because of the weak constructions of the fires and the impact from 1 onto 7.
Yes, and just to elaborate on that, because this is an area I don't really talk about because I'm not an engineer, and I wasn't inside these buildings, and I would rather defer to the people who are experts in this field, or people like yourself who was there in the buildings. The damages in World Trade Center 7. Now, I know there's not a lot of video regarding the south side of the building, but that's where the majority of the damage was. Is that a fair assessment?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, there's a lot of video that's of the south side of the building. There's pictures from PD and fire that have showing the gaping holes in the building. So it wasn't surprising to me when that building came down, because when I went to the command post in Western Bessie and walked a little bit towards south, you can see that this building's going to come down just by the way the holes were. I mean, it's like, yeah. So I'm surprised it stayed up that long.
You expected to collapse earlier?
Oh, much earlier. That's why me and the two chiefs look. Let's get out of here. We'll be the next 3 victims.
The next steps were basically after the events itself. The next steps were basically to look for survivors, but I think that basically ended in 24 hours. And you made the assessment that there wasn't going to be, although there were people that survived World Trade Center. There's a great story. I like to get your thoughts. I just thought of something. There was a fireman who was located, and they made a whole documentary. It was a great documentary. Jay Jonas, who survived in Stairwell B.
He's a great guy, captain.
Yeah.
His company I believe that the story is that they were bringing down this woman that was not a healthy person, a heavy set person,
Right.
but the building one, I think it was really Tower One, that collapsed around them. They got out. I don't know how fast they got out. It was a couple of hours, but they were the last ones out.
Right. They were the last. The story was that when the towers collapsed, that stairwell managed to survive because the other firemen, I think it was like 8 people. I'm not sure about the exact number, but it was like 8 or 9 people. And they were basically in this very short stairwell, and basically they just they held their hats and basically just waited for it all to end. And all they heard was what you described was dead silence. And then all of a sudden this light came about on top of them. And it was basically, they said, well, wait a minute, we're at the bottom. Why are we looking at the light? Not realizing that the whole building had collapsed.
It was very surreal when Rick and I got thrown about 20 feet or so in a dead silence. And there was a couple of police officers next to us, and they were trying to find out what door and all. And all of a sudden, you see the spears of light coming through the smoke, just like, during the sunrise or sunset, exactly like that. And the silence was very eerie. And I know what they were talking about. Like, why do we see the sunlight when there's no building around us?
Correct. Right.
Jay Jones, good guy.
Oh, he's fantastic. One sound that was prescient, and it was an eerie sound actually, that I noticed in news clips, was the sound of silence with the dust hanging in midair. But you could also hear the alarm sounds of the firemen's, I think, radios
Pass
or whatnot
alarms.
going off.
It's a pass alarm. What that does is that if you're not moving for 20 seconds, it'll start to beep, and if you're not moving for another 20 seconds, it goes off like irritating sound. The idea behind it, so if you hear that, there's a fireman that's not moving, so you go to that sound.
Right.
But a lot of guys took off their masks and so on, just threw it to the side and without turning off their pass devices. And some of them were probably for some of the guys that were killed.
Yeah, right. Unfortunately. The next steps taken in the days afterwards was to get the debris out of the way and basically conduct a cleanup. Who was involved with the cleanup?
Well, it was multifaceted. You had the police department that had to take a look at everything that's for evidence. Everything was marked for evidence: beams, wood, whatever it was. And we realized early on that there was too many dump trucks going over the bridges. I mean, we're talking about 1.2 million tons of debris. So that's where we, during the declaration of emergency, we relaxed a lot of laws. So that's how we dredged the pier there. So we would start throwing the debris into that, and I would take it over to the landfill.
Yeah, fresh kills. Fresh kills.
Yeah, fresh kills
fresh
landfill.
kills
Yes.
landfill. And was it? This is another problem facing the first responders and yourself, was also the danger of the dust itself and the chemicals that were in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Were you initially worried about this problem, or was it because it seemed initially that you didn't get the proper warnings or the proper gear to protect yourselves?
Well, we had the bunker gear, we had the masks, and the masks only last 15 minutes. All right. Eventually, we got about not truckloads, but a lot of shipments of the masks that work in chemical environments. So we're trying to make sure the guys just wear the masks, and most of them did. But still, at the same time, too, you really don't know exactly what's in the dust, and any type of chemical, any type of mineral, so on. That my face was completely not numb, but tingling from that dust. And when we got hit, I took my T-shirt, and that's how I breathed through my shirt and T-shirt. I wasn't breathing this stuff in, but when people say, well, the dust is not that harmless, I go, how do you know?
Right.
I mean, it's, you had below a fire, burning debris, we have no idea what debris is. You had 2 tanks of Freon, 160,000 pounds of Freon exposed to the burning fuel. And that Freon we're concerned about that if it got hot, it turned into phosgene. And phosgene is one of the most poisonous chemicals known to man. It's also shock sensitive. So if that thing would have, ticked off, it would have been like a very large explosion.
Oh, I was not even aware of that much.
Yeah.
So there was numerous tests. I mean, there's a paper that was written by Morgan Langman and Michael Cohen about the health effects of the World Trade Center dust, and they called it an unprecedented disaster because this actually was like part two to the deaths of many firemen that came even later.
Mhm.
And still they're feeling, even now, even at the current day, 2023, we're still seeing a number of firemen and first responders basically succumbing to the many cancers that were afflicted upon them for their service at Ground Zero. In
I
fact,
think so far, additional 460 have passed away.
is it 460?
Yeah, something like that. So
I think Jon Stewart, the comedian, basically went to Capitol and spoke on your behalf. Even
that was phenomenal. The guy was phenomenal.
Yeah.
When he asked Five before he passed on, he goes, "You get any of these business cards?" Because I got all the business cards right here, all the mass cards.
Yeah.
So hats off to Stewart. The guy was just.
Do you wish? Yeah, let me ask you too. Do you wish there was more voices like Jon Stewart later to speak on your behalf to give assessment to the of our U.S. government regarding the firemen?
Yeah, of course. But I think John sent a signal, and we could use a lot more celebrities, that would step up. I mean, Congress is Congress. I mean, I don't want to get into that nonsense. I mean, to give you a little short story, as a commissioner in Nassau County, I got a phone call from the county attorney's office and saying that the city court counsel wants to stop by and talk to you about Tower 7. So okay to do it. He goes, "Hey, you weren't working for us then, go for it." This guy comes into my office with 4 people from NIST, and they would ask me questions about Tower 7.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, I go, "What would you like to know?" I told the whole scenario like I told you. The National Institute of Science and Technology came to my office in Nassau County, and they were asking me questions about Tower 7. And I said, I told what's going on. And they said to me that they were hypothesizing that the building came down because a fire started on the 3rd floor by the generators. And I shook my head. I go, "No, it didn't start by the 3rd floor. It was up in the upper levels, like we talked about before."
Mm-hmm.
I go, "Well, where did you get this story from?" "Well, we have pictures of the fire on the 3rd floor." I go, "Well, yeah, fires do drop down elevator shaft, staircase, and so on, and other ventilation systems. But it started on the 3rd floor." And I go, "Do you have the blueprints, the floor plans?" They go, "No." "Do you have pictures of the south side of the building, north side of the building?" They go, "No." They go, "How are you hypothesizing that this is occurring, that the building 7 came down?" So I showed them where to get the plans. I told them where to get the photographs. I got a phone call from one of the people from the department, the Commerce Department, and they were apologizing for wasting my time. I go, "I won't apologize." And they go, "We're going to do the whole report again." So 2 years later on, they came back with a report that looked like, they did their homework.
Right, sure.
So you have people telling you from the EPA that the air is okay. The building came down because of X, Y, and Z. And, you have the FBI and CIA really blowing away about, covering our bases and protecting us. So I really don't have too much faith in our federal agencies.
No, I don't blame you, because during the 9/11 Commission, one of the big arguments from the fire department, as well as the victims' families who are currently undertaking a civil suit against Saudi Arabia, was that Rudy Giuliani basically was considered a catalyst for not upgrading the fire radio systems of the fire department. Is that familiar with you?
Well, the radios are always, what I remember, were always being updated. I think what it is that it's a very difficult area to coordinate, to have someone that could talk to fire, police, EMS, sanitation, the sheriff department, school security. That's very difficult to do. But our radio system I thought was pretty up to date.
Was pretty up to date. With the rebuilding of the World Trade Center, now we're One World Trade. Is it your worry that something like this could happen in the future again?
That's it. I won't be surprised if anything will happen again. Now, will they go after Tower 7 and Tower 1, the two buildings? They could. Will they go someplace else? They probably would go hit someplace else. But right now, I think the cybersecurity is the biggest threat right now. And you look at the pipeline coming up from the south. They hacked into that. Suffolk County is still going through a bad IT system here. Shut down the whole government for the last 3 months. So I think the cybersecurity system is, I think, the biggest threat because it could really hurt us big time, especially with hospitals, medical decisions, so
on. What is your biggest worry currently regarding international terrorism or the weaknesses of the civil sector of the New York City?
Okay.
Is that the worry? The future of New York City is, well, what would you strengthen?
Right at the top of my head is the cybersecurity.
Yeah.
I mean, right now we got artificial intelligence, which I'm very concerned about.
Yes.
I don't know where that's going. But when you shut down IT systems, how do hospitals work? How do PD and fire communicate back and forth? Because everything is all on, this based on IP, Internet over Protocol, and phones and so on. But then you could cripple a country just by doing that, and our banking system, go on and on.
Sure. So, just to wrap up, Richard, what are you currently doing now? I mean, you're always active. And what are your concerns for the future regarding the fire department in New York City?
Well, my concerns for all the agencies is about safe and secure operations and so on. I mean, I came on in the 70s, and the fires then are totally different than they are today. I mean, my one son, Richie, he's involved in a lot of research, and they're looking at smoke explosions, looking at flashovers much more rapidly. I mean, we can go into a building, it's wood, paper, so on, and maybe some cotton, but now everything you turn around, it's like your iPhone, made of fuel, plastics.
Right.
And the clothing, the walls. So fires are much faster, more explosive, and the tactics they're keeping up. I mean, FDNY, like a good friend of mine, former commissioner and chief department, Sal Casano, you could run FDNY out of a phone booth. That's how efficient it is. They're really, it's a class act, and EMS is really great. But getting right now the way the current events are going on is the cybersecurity. That's number one.
Right. What was the biggest lesson learned on September 11, 2001?
Oh, I was never heard about that one, but I think the biggest lesson is that it was one of our recommendations in the 9/11 report, is that we have to be more imaginative. Okay, how can we get hurt? Not by fire, not by diseases, but what's the bad guy thinking about? And we weren't thinking about the planes running into the Vatican, but they didn't, but they were running into us. So what's our weak spots? That's how that's the lessons learned.
Richard Rotanz, former Office of Emergency Management